You're very welcome to this ramble about Castletown on the outskirts of Dundalk. Here we see Dundalgan, a motte traditionally associated with the legendary Cuchulainn. It dates from about 1180. It is also known as Castletown Mount. Outside the motte, as you see here pointed out, is the standing stone reputed to be the burial place of the warrior Cuchulainn. Here is a map of our planned route. To get our bearings, we are situated on the Castletown Road out of Dundalk that leads on to Castleblaney. As you see, we can access the Castleblaney Road by taking the exit off the M1 motorway. Or alternatively, if you're in the middle of Dundalk, down here at the end of Clonbassett Street and Church Street, down past both St Nicholas's churches, you can come out the Castletown Road. So we are here situated at what we call Castletown Motte and Standing Stone. Next, we will come down and we will visit St John's Church and the graveyard. Across from there is Castletown Castle, built by the Bellews, and the later Castletown House. We will then look at St John's Well at Toberona, and we will finish our walk at what's known as the Coffin Bridge. I'm Seamus Bellew, Joint Secretary of the County Louth Archaeological and Historical Society, and we hope you will enjoy this walk. Here we are at the entrance to the motte and the ruins of the 18th century Burn Tower House. And we will now walk up along the avenue. Here we get a sense of the steepness of the motte. What survives today is a high and wide earthen motte planted with trees. The motte was possibly constructed by Bertram de Verdon, as we said, about 1180. Here we see the familiar fogra, stating that this is a national monument in the care of the OPW. The motte appears to have been built on the site of a pre-Christian fort called Dundalgan, the Fort of Dalga. This is a view of the ruined castellated house built in 1780 by Patrick Byrne of Seatown as a gift to his grandnephew. Here is a recording of the plaque on the tower, and it reads, "Erected by Patrick Byrne, Esquire of Castletown, for his grandnephew Patrick Byrne, son of Henry Byrne, Esquire of Seatown, 1780. And Patrick was known as the Pirate Byrne." Here is the entrance to the ruined building. The society had a museum here that was burned in the revolutionary period from 1919 to 1923. Neighbouring the motte is an electricity substation, and the modern mast is also to be seen. Just before we leave the motte, we view a map published by Paul Gosling that shows the route taken by Queen Maeve's forces. As we come down along here, the Thornbow Culnia is the story of a cattle raid reputed to have taken place around the time of Christ. And here we have noted the position of Dalga. Queen Maeve's forces followed the Slieve Mea Lucra southwards and crossed the Castletown River. Here's the Castletown River, and they crossed the river there at Toberona. So now we have left Castletown Motte and Standing Stone, and we're standing here at what's known as Castletown Crossroads. And we take the short walk down towards Dundalk, and we visit the church and the graveyard. So here we are at Castletown Crossroads, looking back towards the motte, and we've just come down this road here, and now we're at the crossroads. We head in this way towards Dundalk. This road here takes us out to Castleblaney, and this road here is the Mill Road. We'll look at the Mill Road in a moment. In 1843, Daniel O'Connell held a monster repeal meeting at which nearly 30,000 people are said to have been present, under the chairmanship of Richard Verdon. The corner house on this corner here, on the southwest corner, was the police barracks, and it was shown on an 1855 Ordnance Survey map. But the police station, seemed to have been gone by the early 1870s. So here's a view again from the Castletown Crossroads, looking down at what's known as the Mill Road, down towards the rugby club. As you can see, Crossleaf Mountain, an ancient volcanic vent above the village of Farkill. Slieve Gullen is a little further away in distance, and to the east is not in view. As we'll see later on, there was a corn mill roughly at this location here, hence the name Mill Road. And this location was at the edge of the Castletown complex. And as we say, it'll feature later on an Ordnance Survey map. So now we will make a right angle turn here and head in towards Dundalk, to the graveyard and to the castle. And here we see on our left, we can see the turrets of the castle on our left as we'll head down. Now, as we head down the road towards Dundalk, on our left we see the entrance to the castle. Now the Louis Convent, and also beside the Louis Convent is the De La Salle School, to which we will return. So we've come down the Castletown Road back towards Dundalk, and on our right, left as you view it going out, is the entrance to Castletown Graveyard. In 1992, the gravestones in this graveyard were fully transcribed and mapped and published by Noel Ross and Maureen Wilson. We could spend the entire tour here. We just give a sample of some of the gravestones, and here you can see the detailed map that was published by Noel Ross and Maureen Wilson and the others. Here we see the gravestone of Pj Carroll, of Pj Carroll's factory. Of your charity, pray for the soul of Patrick James Carroll of Dundalk, who departed this life the 5th of May 1879, aged 73. May his soul rest in peace. And of his wife Esther, who died in October 1902, aged 80 years. This gravestone here of slate was erected by Mrs. Joyce in memory of her husband, James Joyce, Quartermaster Sergeant, late of the Louth Rifles, who died in January 1862. This is the fallen gravestone of Angela Matthews, who died in 1938. Angela was founder and president of the Louth branch of Cumann that was founded in 1915. We cannot read any of the inscription, but it was recorded, as we mentioned, in 1992. But on the back is a later inscription to her niece, Deirdre Matthews Little, who died in 1970. This gravestone was erected by Brian Roddy, and it recites 4 generations of his family, starting with Art McMahon, who died from his gunshot wound received at the Battle of the Boyne. And then later on in a generation, we note that the shocks of the Lisbon earthquake of 1756 injured the health of his son Patrick and obliged him to resign his professorship in the college in that city, in the city of Lisbon. In contrast, we have a simple iron cross that commemorates Annie Toner, who died in 1920. This plaque reads, "This wall was built by the gratuitous work of the stonemasons of Dundalk Trades Society, AD 1832. The gravestone on the left commemorates Mary Carney of Dowdall's Hill, who died in 1840, and you can see the nice sunbust bust there on the gravestone. And on our right is the gravestone to Ellen Hoy, who died in 1863 of Dundalk. These 2 gravestones. On the left, we have the gravestone of Thomas Mulholland, and it reads, quartermaster of the 1st Battalion of the Louth Brigade of the IRA, who was shot by forces of the British Crown in Dundalk, and he died on the 16th of April 1920, RIP. And on the right, we have the gravestone of Sergeant J. Smith, and his number is given there, 6980868, and he was of the Enniskilling Fusiliers, and he died on the 26th of March 1946, aged 40, in loving memory of John, remembered by his wife, family, mother and sisters. This here is a very prominent feature in Castletown Graveyard, and it's known as the Kerley Reardus, and it marks an otherwise unmarked grave of the Dunn family, and we hope to feature this in an article in the near future. Here we see the medieval church dedicated to St. John the Baptist. Records indicate that the church was here in the 13th century, though the present remains probably date to later than the 15th century. Here's another view of the medieval church. The altar under the east window, there's the altar there, there's the east window. The altar bears the inscription of Sir Walter Bellew, priest, and he erected the altar in honour of St. John the Baptist on the 1st of January, Anno Domini 1631, and you can see the remains there of some of the writing. You can see the Walter Bellew there. So this drawing from inside the church was done by Harry Tempest, and it appeared in the 1912 journal, and it shows the tomb here on the main aisle of the church in much better condition than it is now 100 years on. Tempest also took a rubbing of the tomb, and he made a drawing of the inscription, long since worn away. The Bellew coat of arms appears in the drawing, and the monument was erected in memory of Robert Bellew, late of Dunamore, and he departed this life in January 1630, and the tomb was erected by his wife, Dame Ismay Taff. So it is time for us to leave the graveyard. This is the cover of the 1992 publication that we mentioned earlier, and the drawing of the gate and the entrance to the graveyard was done by Jimmy Green. So we head up the road, head out towards Castleblaney. On our left is the church, and further on now on the right we come to the entrance to the Louis Convent, the castle, and the later Georgian house. So here we are. So the Georgian house, the castle, and the school. Here is the location on an ordnance survey map. This here is the Castletown Road, as you can see. There's the church and the graveyard that we just left. We exited there and came up and entered about here. But at the time of the ordnance survey map, the entrance is down from the other road to which we will travel later on. So here we have a back view of the castle. The castle was built about 1475 by Richard Bellew, who received a £10 grant. Prior to this, the Bellews had Castle Roach. This castle can be described as an ivy-clad four-stage tower with a distinct batter and four-cornered turrets crowned by modern crenulated parapets. And we're indebted to Christine Casey from her book, The Buildings in North Leinster, 1993, for that description. Here we see the entrance to the castle. There's the main door, and there was a plaque erected in 1989 marking Bellew's Castle as a medieval tower house. And also at the entrance is an information board detailing some of the features of the castle. So here is a view from the main entrance side. There's the door just in underneath there that we just saw on the previous slide. And you can also see there's a stone carved head can be seen, and that's roughly the position of it there. The northeast and the southwest towers are square in shape, so that's that one there and that one there diagonally opposite, whereas the ones on the southeast and the northwest are larger and rectangular in plan. On the southeast, the second floor room was that of a chapel, and the priests slept on the next floor underneath the chapel, or above the chapel. Here we have an engraving from 1791 by J. Hooper. The original purpose of the castle was to cover the crossing of the Castletown River at Tuberona, to which the roads from the northwest and the north probably converged. The castle served to protect this section of the Pale from the raids of the O'Neills. And here's a plan of the tower house. And again, you can see the position of the carved head, and the corbels are there. And on the left, on the right, we have a section of the castle, and you can see that the hatched square there indicates the 15th and 16th century origin of those parts of the building there. So a good part of the tower house dates from the 15th and 16th century. John Bellew, who lived from 1522 to the year 1600, would have been the main occupant over that period of time. Again, you can see these plans that show the spiral staircase on the second floor level, and we also see the plan at the turret level. And you notice the 4 turrets have additional stairs, so to which you can kind of climb up further and get a view of the town. These drawings and plans can be seen in the County Louth Archaeological Inventory, and there's also a detailed article on the castle in the 1944 journal. So these drawings and further descriptions can be found there. So here in this slide we have 2 views. On the left we have one of the turrets, and you can see the doorway to which you enter, and you can kind of climb up the steps. On the right we have part of the spiral staircase from inside the castle, and obviously these steps are not now used by the current students. So here we have a photo from 2013, the year of the gathering, and the Bellews gathered here for their biennial reunion. From the summit of the castle, you can get a good view of the town and the surrounding areas, which we will see in a moment. On a fine day, 5 other counties, Down, Armagh, Cavan, Monaghan, Meath, can be seen. At this gathering in 1993, the Bellews came largely from Dundalk and other parts of County Louth, Meath, Galway, Armagh and Dublin, as well as England and Australia. So, standing at the top of the tower house where the Bellews gathered in 2013, we can get a view of St. John's medieval church and the graveyard. So, looking further in towards Dundalk from the top of the castle, we can see the spire of the Green Church, St. Nicholas's Church of Ireland, and there's the spire of the tower on the Maris Church and the surrounding areas down around Church Street. Here's the railway bridge over the Castletown River. Dundalk Junction was opened in 1849, and by 1852, Drogheda and Dundalk were linked to Portadown, but the Drogheda viaduct hadn't been built until later on in 1855. So there you can see the railway bridge over the Castletown River. 1. The castle was used for classrooms for art, music and other subjects in the Dunlewy School. However, since 2017, it has not been used as the building is being assessed as to its future use. As we'll see, the Tippings came after the Bellew family. In 1747, Thomas Tipping lived in the later Georgian house, but he used the castle as a kitchen and servants' hall. By the time the Louis sisters arrived in 1950, they had to completely renovate the interior of the castle. Castletown was in the hand of the Bellew family for about 8 generations. Richard Bellew appears to be the first member of the family to settle at Dundalk. Prior to that, there would have been in Castle Roach and Bellewstown. Richard Bellew died about 1500 and he was married to Maud Plunkett. His grandson was Christopher Bellew, and he was married to Catherine Fleming of Slane. And their son was the John Bellew that we mentioned earlier on, who lived from 1522 and he died in 1600, and his wife was Margaret Plunkett. John's great-great-grandson was another John Bellew who married Mary Birmingham, and he was the last of the Bellews to live at Castletown. So here we see this John Bellew that we mentioned, the last of the family to live at Castletown. He married in 1663 to Mary Birmingham of Dunfert, County Kildare. He was displaced during the Cromwellian period because the Bellews were Catholic landowning, But he returned in 1660 on the Restoration under King Charles II. John Bellew was knighted in 1663 and he was created Baron of Duleek by James II in 1686. And we will see towards the end of our tour that the impaled arms of John Bellew and his wife Mary Birmingham are on the bridge that he built before he left Dundalk. So here we see a model depiction of Lord Bellew's regiment, John Bellew's regiment. He had his own regiment and was deeply involved in King James's side, so much so that he died from the injuries received at the Battle of Aughrim. His tomb in Duleek, County Meath, noted that he was shot in the belly. He was buried initially in Westminster Cathedral and then brought back to Duleek a year or two later. So there's the model depiction of the regiment, and you can see his own regimental flag, the family motto, To Don Ho. And Lord Bellew's regiment were involved in Derry, the Myru Pass, Newry in 1690, at Ballymore Fort, but the regiment didn't play any major part at the Battle of Boyne, and as we mentioned, they were present at the Battle of Aughrim, where John Bellew was shot. There are various accounts as to what happened around Dundalk prior to 1690 and the Battle of the Boyne. General Schomburg was camped some miles away. It's thought that some of John Bellew's sheep were killed to feed King James's army. There is documentary evidence that Oliver Plunkett, Archbishop of Armagh, visited Castletown in 1670. He was possibly a distant relative through the Plunketts, and we know for definite that he was there because this is recorded in the Italian letter written by Oliver Plunkett. He says in Italian that he was in the palazzo of a distinguished cavalier and knight, John Bellew, near Dundalk. The 2007 article in the journal by the late Vanessa Ryan Jose suggests that this mouth puller at Castletown, just down the steps leading to the garden from the front of the school, she suggests that this mouth puller is likely to date from the late 15th century. She also points out that it's often incorrectly called a Sheila Nagig. She places the mouth puller in the context of stone heads, one of which we've seen on the castle. So the Bellew family finished living here after the 1690 period. The property then passed on to the Hamilton family. Their title was Viscount Boyne, through Dorothy Bellew Hamilton, his wife. By 1740, Edward Tipping acquired the property and built the Georgian house that you now see here in front. In 1784, it was purchased by James Eastwood of Armagh. In 1790, his son James, a clergyman, inherited the estate. Then it passed to the Bigger family of Falmore. John James Eastwood Bigger married in 1894 Kathleen Fortescue of Stephenstown. There were no children. After the 1920s, the property was briefly owned by a Taft family, and in 1950 it was purchased by the Order of St. Louis, who still reside here today, and that's the convent where the sisters now live. This gateway at Castletown was erected by James Eastwood in 1790, and this is the view of the gateway from the Louis convent side. However, the keystone bearing the inscription, you can see the James Eastwood 1790 bit, is on the other side that fronts on to the neighbouring National School, Skull, on Bostia, and we're grateful to Ray Byrne for the courtesy of this photograph. Here we see a commemorative tribute that was presented to the sisters of the Louis Convent in the year 2001 in recognition of their Golden Jubilee, 50 years of service to education in Dundalk by the Urban District Council. And we also see the insignia of the order that was founded by Louis Marie Bottin in 1797 in France. So here we are inside the convent at the convent chapel, and this is the wooden altar. It originally came from Kilcurry Church. So here is a close-up on the panels on the altar. On the right is the panel that you saw in the middle of the altar in the previous slide, and it is the depiction of St. Bridget and St. Darren. On our left, we have St. Fursey and King Sigbert of East Anglia in England. We also see some of the stained glass windows from the chapel, and there's the traditional St. Bridget's cross. So it's now time for us to leave the castle, the convent and the school at Castletown. So we come back out onto the Castletown Road, and we walk down towards Dundalk a little bit, passing the graveyard and the church. Then we come to the junction of the road that is now known as Bellew's Bridge Road, and we turn left and we head down there a little bit, and you'll see we proceed on to the Holy Well at Toberona. So there's the sign for Bellew's Bridge. It's called Bellew's Bridge Place. And this is an example of the fine architecture from the mid-20th century, roughly, as we pass along the road. So here on our left, as we walk down Bellew's Bridge Road, we see St. Joseph's Church and Skull Náisiúnta Ón Báiste in Castletown, 1966, the school of St. John the Baptist. We saw earlier the medieval church was dedicated to him, and also the well. The church was built in 1996 and replaced an earlier galvanised church, and it now serves Castletown, Fatima and Toberona areas. As we mentioned, it replaced an earlier church. Recently, in her book, Paula Kavanagh, she published some photographs from her father's collection, the collection of Paul Kavanagh, and a photograph of the opening of the previous church. So we turned right at St. Joseph's Church, and we're now standing at St. John's Well, Toberona. But we look further on down the road a little bit towards the bridge that we first saw earlier on Queen Maeve's route. So that's Toberona Bridge that crosses the Castletown River. So here we are at St. John's Well, still in the townland of Castletown. Larry Conlon noted in his two-part article, 1999 to 2000, that the well is dedicated to St. John the Baptist, but he had a reference that parishioners traditionally in the neighbouring parish called it Tubber Ronan's Well. And you can see the Castletown River heading on down there in the background. And you can see the plaque as well. The well was repaired by the Society in 1908, as shown on the plaque there. Tubber Ronan and Oscuelga repaired in 1908. So here we take a final look at the route taken by Queen Maeve as she travelled south from Faughard and crossed the Castletown River at Toberona. Here is the well roughly, and then just a short bit further on there, as you see in the photograph, is the bridge. We're finally going to take the short walk from here, from the Holy Well, over to the Coffin Bridge, and roughly as the crow flies. So on the modern map, here is the Holy Well, there's the bridge over the river, and we're going to just come back up along the road. We're going to turn opposite St. Joseph's Church, go onto the motorway and arrive at the Coffin Bridge. So here we are, we go under the modern motorway, and here is the Coffin Bridge over the Castletown River. It's known as the Coffin Bridge, possibly because of the shape of that stone there over the armorial to John Bellew and his wife Mary Birmingham, who we saw mentioned earlier on. The inscription underneath, it's very hard to see there, but you can roughly see some of it. The inscription records the fact that the bridge was built both by John and Jon, beginning with I in Latin, and Mary, his wife Birmingham of Dunfert, in the year 1674, and that date is reasonably clear there. And you can see the impaled coat of arms with the Bellew arms on the left and the arms of Birmingham. It's an indented shape there on the right. So just before we conclude, a word of thanks to a few people who helped with this video. Donald Hall, our president, Paul Gosling, Philip McGuinness and Ray Byrne, and the Louis sisters and school authorities who kindly facilitated various visits during the past number of years. Photographed here are the coat of arms of the Bellew family, a coloured version of those displayed on the bridge, along with the supporters and the family motto, To Don Ho, that translates as All on High, and a Barnes coronet. So finally, from the bridge, we can do a zoom on a camera and we can get a picture or a photograph of Ballyregan Castle. It belonged to the White family. Perhaps the next time we'll cross the river and visit Falmore and Ballyregan townlands. But for now, we hope you've enjoyed this walk, and kind regards, Seamus. Thank you very much.